I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
After working hard at the gym, you need a mattress that works as hard as you do. Spinalign has engineered the perfect mattress for you and your active lifestyle. Don't compromise your recovery with inferior sleep. Order your Spinalign mattress today.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching the Tasty Pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi, as we now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, we have a sale right now at speciesnutrition.com. I know a lot of our viewers have positively responded, especially when we run these mini Ask Dave sales. Well, this week, it's macadamia nut oil, a favorite of bodybuilders and their meal prep, $14.99 through Sunday night.
You know what? The great thing about mac oil is it took me, when I first came out with it, it took a long time for me to educate people, how great macadamia nut oil is for your health, for performance. Obviously, it's a great, monounsaturated fats are a great source of fuel. They're really good for your heart and cholesterol profiles. If you have problems with high LDLs, they help lower that. It's just a very heart healthy fat and it tastes good and you can cook with it. Macadamia nut oil, unlike extra virgin olive oil, has a very high smoke point. So once it got this message, and I think a lot of people understand the benefits of mac oil now and the fact that you should really only sell it in a glass bottle. You never put oils in a plastic because it leaches the plastic into the oil. Once I educated people like that, we can't keep the stuff in stock because there's not a lot of people that sell macadamia nut oil. And so what I like to do is do a sale so that to get people, to be able to try it who maybe haven't given it a whirl, haven't added it to their foods, haven't seen how their bodies responded to it. So we're going to do $14.99. That's like $10 off of the typical full retail price. It's going to be available at speciesnutrition.com. These bottles have a long expiration date, over a year, so you don't have to worry about that. If you want to stock up on it, because a lot of guys will buy a couple cases, when we do these sales, that's fine. Anything over $100 on the speciesnutrition.com website, you get free shipping. So, macadamia nut oil bottles weigh a lot, so you're better off spending, buying a case, spending over the $100, you get the free shipping. And once again, I think that you guys are going to absolutely love this if you haven't tried it. I know all my typical customers will put their orders in now because they use it all the time. And this is just my way of giving back. It was a hard product to bring to marketplace, but once we did it, I think a lot of people were thankful for it. And if you haven't tried mac oil, give it a whirl. I'm telling you, you'll be sold on it.
So again, right now, speciesnutrition.com, macadamia nut oil at $14.99. Through Sunday night or while supplies last. Let's go to the questions. Of course, the first 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. The first question, you've touched on this a couple of times over the last few months. Is oral glutathione a waste of money and injectable the only way to get the benefits?
Yeah, glutathione doesn't have good oral absorption. You have to inject the stuff if you want it. Now, you could take a precursor to glutathione, which would be N-acetylcysteine. So if you ever see NAC, that supplement, that's N-acetylcysteine, that's a precursor. So your body can convert that into glutathione. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get the blood levels you would normally get from an injectable form. If you take 200 milligrams of glutathione injectable per day, it's almost impossible to get that same amount into your bloodstream by taking just pure NAC. So it definitely helps with the conversion to glutathione, but you're going to get a much more potent dose if you inject it. Our good friends over at TitanMedicalCenter.com have injectable glutathione. If you're not refrigerating your glutathione, then you probably don't have an active form of it, because when Titan ships it, they'll ship it on ice, and then you put it right in your refrigerator. So it has to be kept cold. And that's an important thing, because I know people saying, oh yeah, I'm using glutathione. I'm like, oh, where are you getting it from? I'm getting it from this website. I'm like, did it come refrigerated? No. Do you keep it in the refrigerator? No. Am I supposed to? Probably not good. So you got to keep that stuff cold. And once again, about 200 milligrams per day, you'll see a real nice difference with that.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, my mom has high C-reactive count on 11 mgl, probably mainly due to arthritis and an immune problem. Can you give the best diet and all the supplements she would need to lower it? And I guess would exercise help as well?
Well, exercise helps everything, so there's no doubt about that. But high C-reactive protein is not good to have, and I'll tell you why. Because that's a measure of your chronic inflammation in your body. If you chronically have high inflammation, you're going to have a much greater disposition to coronary heart disease, cancer, arthritis, and all these other things. So some people think, well, I have this disease and that's why I have high C-reactive. Yeah, but you might also, it might be the other way around. You might have high C-reactive, which is causing your arthritis. So I had bad arthritis in both shoulders, and what I found that was when I ate more of an anti-inflammation diet, I wasn't experiencing as much discomfort. So I was able to alleviate some of my inflammatory issues by lowering my body inflammation, and that was by using like a product like my Omega-Lyze formula. Essential fatty acids reduce, they're anti-inflammatory. They increase the anti-inflammatory prostaglandins in the body, and we know that works really well. Eating diet that is low in red meat, and even chicken to that degree, in other words, low arachidonic acid content, is going to keep your inflammation lower. If you want to like really lower your inflammation, you could eat, vegan diets obviously the most, but if you want to still eat, protein animal sources so that you can recover and build muscle, stick with like your egg whites, fish, okay, whey protein isolate. Those are very anti-inflammatory, type foods. Whereas, your chickens and chickens and red meats and stuff like that are going to have a much higher arachidonic acid content, which will raise inflammation, obviously. So just making those small changes. You could take also supplements like curcumin, which is a naturally anti-inflammatory. If you do have like arthritis and you want to, and it's really, really bothering you, you could even use boswellia. The standard process makes a good boswellia complex. They sell it on Amazon.com. You can try that as well. That's more of an extreme. I wouldn't use that all the time unless like you had an inflammatory bowel type disease. But just for regular reduction of inflammation, nothing beats like a good essential fatty acid supplement. And Omega-Lyze utilizes those anti-inflammatory essential fatty acids, but we also put palmitoleic acid in there, which is a natural anti-inflammatory. It's not essential, that fatty acid, but they've shown that it has a great reduction in C-reactive protein, and you'll also have better insulin sensitivity. So there are ways definitely to do that. The key, however, and I could say all these things a million times, the key is consistently applying it. The problem is people do it a couple days a week, or they do it initially and then they fall off. You have to live the lifestyle. If you can't apply it every single day, then you're probably not going to get much benefit out of it. If you neurotically apply, and that doesn't mean you can't have a cheat meal once a week with some, red meat and stuff like that, foods that you like, but on a regular basis, obviously you want to keep sugar content low too. On a regular basis, you have to apply it all the time to get that benefit long term. Otherwise, you're not going to see it. When I go and get my C-reactive protein levels checked, they're almost zero. So that's how low they are, and it's always that way. I've never had a high C-reactive since I started really eating really healthy. So that's something that you guys have to really address, and I think that will help her tremendously.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not already following us on Instagram, the handle is official_RxMuscle. If you're watching us on YouTube for the first time, hit the subscribe button below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our show segments, updates, or like the explosive episode of After Hours we had last night. And Dave, as we've been scrolling through our questions for today, as you can imagine, many of the questions and comments are relating to what took place last night. For those of you who have not yet seen that episode of After Hours, so there is a staple of the Whack Pack, Mr. G, and he called out Big Lenny for, I guess, comments made on another podcast, another channel. And when I say called out, it was an explosive, I want to say about 30, 35 minutes, maybe the most riveting, awkward at times, but highly explosive content that we've put out in quite some time. But Dave, if you want to address that, because we're getting a lot. I wish I
didn't
could
even
read
know
some
it was
of these on
coming
here without knowing that YouTube is going to ding us. But if you want to comment on what took place last night between Mr. G and Big Lenny.
To be honest with you, it sucker punched me because I didn't know it was coming. All of a sudden, Mr. G out of nowhere. I didn't even know Lenny said anything about Mr. G. I guess on Leo's podcast, Leo Longevity, he said that he called Mr. G like, you know, a moron or a total moron. And Mr. G took that very personally, especially because he felt it would affect his business. You know, his MrPottsProtein.com, is all the protein cookies he sells and everything like that. And he felt that, you know, hey, we're all on a podcast together after hours, and Lenny is going on another show and bad-mouthing him. And, you know, Lenny was basically non-apologetic for it. Mr. G just went nuts. And look, I know Mr. G, he's like one of the most, you know, loyal, heartfelt guys. He's the kind of guy you call 4 a.m. and say, I need help, and he comes there. You know, he'll drive like from New York to Florida to help me if I wanted to. So when you show him disrespect or you show that you're not loyal to him, he can't handle it. It's like that's the greatest, the most, you know, deceptive thing you can do to him, the most devious thing you can do to him in his mind. And so it got so heated, and Lenny wasn't backing down. Like, if I were Lenny, I would have said, hey, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything. It was just, I only said it because, you know, you didn't send me a bag of cookies, you know, which is what it really was. But Lenny kind of was kind of pushing Mr. G's buttons a little bit. So it came down to the fact that, like, I think we might have to organize like an MMA fight with these guys in the octagon, you know, like Godzilla versus King Kong type of thing. So Mr. G, Mr. G is 63, but I would not want to fight him, put it that way, because he's got the greatest endurance of all time, and he can fight. And Lenny weighs, you know, Lenny may be a beast and weigh 335 pounds, but, you know, I don't think Lenny will last more than, you know, 30 seconds in a ring or something like that before he collapses of a heart attack. So whether it'll ever happen, I don't know. We've organized things like this before, but in COVID times, we might not be able to make it happen. But it's interesting to fantasize about what would happen if they fought each other. But I wish they would have just made up. But Lenny he didn't want to apologize. So what am I going to tell you? You know, I don't know. It's just not, it wasn't cool. But, you know, now Lenny's fans are all going crazy on Mr. G. The whole thing is so ridiculous at the end of the day. But, you know, I back Mr. G. He's you know, my friend for 30 years, you know, and I show him a lot of loyalty and a lot of love. So I don't know why Lenny said that about him, but, you know, Lenny says wacky things all the time anyway. And I don't even know, you know, why. I don't think he knows why he says half the things he says.
So again, if you missed that moment, it's on After Hours from last night on the RxMuscle YouTube channel. Let's go to Marco Antonio Miranda Pena. Olive oil, a good fat in Brazil. It's very common in terms of the spectrum of essential fatty acids, omega-6, omega-3s. So I guess your thoughts on olive oil.
You know, I just talked about macadamia oil. Olive oil, look, is a great source of monounsaturated fats. You know, it's very heart healthy, obviously. The problem with olive oil is you can't cook with it because you can cook light sauteing, but if you cook for any length of time and heat it up too much, it burns and it ruins all the health benefits whatsoever. So really, olive oil should be added to your food after it's already cooked, so you're not heating it up too high. You know, also olive oil actually has a lot of omega-6s, believe it or not, in relation to omega-3s. So all oils have mixed, you know, components to them. The omega-9 or the monounsaturated portion of olive oil is what it's made up of predominantly, just like macadamia nut oil is predominantly these monounsaturated fats. The essential fatty acids, the omega-6s and 3s, it contains small amounts of those. Macadamia oil contains a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-3s to 6s. That's why it's so balanced. Whereas olive oil actually contains more of the omega-6s, less of the omega-3s, making it less stable. And that's why it's more light sensitive. It can go rancid if you leave it, you know, exposed to oxygen. Its vitamin E content is lower than macadamia oil. So to answer the question, is it an anti-inflammatory oil? Not really, okay, because you have to have more of the omega-3s for that purpose. Is it a very heart healthy, you know, type of an oil? Absolutely. You know, extra virgin olive oil, if you get a real extra virgin olive oil, in this country sometimes it's hard, probably Brazil it's probably pretty good. Very healthy. Those monounsaturates burn very well, so adding it to your food is going to be very beneficial. Just don't cook with it, obviously, and make sure it's not exposed to light, and make sure you don't. once you crack a bottle open, it's got to be used within a couple of weeks. It can't be on your shelf for 6 months or a year. It's going to go bad. They go rancid after a while. So that's the only the negative. Now, I don't know if there's a lot of macadamia nut oil in Brazil. I don't think there probably is, and that's probably why your choices are limited. But to get the monounsaturated fats that I recommend people use, extra virgin is fine to use, no problem.
Let's go to AJ49. Dave, after dieting down, how long should I, quote, hold that weight before putting size back on to avoid a bad rebound?
Sometimes the rebound off of a diet is, if you eat the right foods and structure it properly, can be a tremendous boom in muscle growth. Just because the problem is a lot of guys come off like a contest prep and they eat a lot of junk food. And so if you have a propensity to get fat, that's when sometimes you can get fat after that. I would gain a lot of water weight after, I came off a contest diet, but no matter how much food I put down, I didn't get fat. I just got more muscular. So the anabolic rebound off of a contest prep or a diet type prep is usually mostly muscle if you're eating, assuming you're not just eating ice cream and cheesecake. If you're continuing to eat high protein, moderate fat, and then you're adding a lot of carbs in there, whether they be from junky carbs or clean carbs, you're more than likely going to gain a lot of muscle. But depending on your metabolism and your insulin sensitivity and your ability to add add body fat or not add body fat, that will dictate how much body fat you add. If you happen to be a person who gets fat easily, keep your carbs a little bit lower. You can eat a lot more food volume-wise, just don't eat as much carbs and try to stay away from the sugar carbs. If you are a person that has a ridiculous metabolism that it doesn't matter what you eat, then as long as you're eating high protein, moderate fat, you can eat a lot of carbs and you could probably eat junky carbs and you're still going to grow. So how you handle, macronutrients will dictate what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. Do you have to continue dieting and put yourself into some kind of a maintenance phase? Not necessarily, not if you don't get fat. Now for women, it's a different story because women seem to be able to eat as much as men can after a contest prep, except they weigh half as much. So obviously women get fat a little bit more easily than men do, so they got to watch the amount of food they're eating. So once again, if you're going to have that insatiable appetite, try to add more protein and more fat and still keep the carbs rather moderate. If you just go and start eating donuts and cakes and cookies, you're going to get fat, especially if you're a woman. Women's bodies love to hoard fat after a diet because that's what their bodies are meant to do evolutionarily speaking, because that's estrogen's job, store lower body fat for times of famine, in case the woman gets pregnant. It's hard to battle against, evolution and thousands of years of evolution. So understanding that, just try to stay away from the sugary carbs.
Let's go to the real deal. Junior Dave, when is the last day you should stop training legs prior to a show?
I say a week before. Are you going to have a problem if you do it 5 days before? Probably not. But if you have a good ability to set up your schedule, accordingly, 7 days before. Usually, like if I do a show, sometimes I would do shows back to back to back. So if I did a Saturday show and then the following Saturday I was going to do another show, that Sunday I would go back to the gym and do legs. Now sometimes, you do a show on a Saturday, then the following Thursday, because you're going to do a show because, these shows sometimes are 4 days, you still go and on Sunday do your legs, maybe nothing crazy. And even though it's only going to be 5 days between, you should still be okay because you had just taken off 2 days before the competition. So once again, if you can do it 7 days before, 5 days is not the end of the world.
Let's go to Hingcheld. At 54 with tons of knee pain, I'm having trouble maintaining any mass in my quads. Heavy squats are not out of the question. I train reasonably heavy with everything else, but not feeling the quads working. I'm shrinking. What can I do to reverse this trend? So, again, we've been getting a lot of these kind of questions. An older bodybuilder having knee pains and having to try to work around that.
I'm not looking at your x-rays or your MRI, so I don't know how bad your knees are. Obviously, the first line of defense would be to put in a really good, high quality, high potency joint replacement repair product. High glucosamine, at least 4 grams a day, with MSM, at least 4 grams a day. My Arthritis product from Species Nutrition gives you both of that. If you do 5 pills twice a day, you're going to get 4 grams of each of those, plus chondroitin and boron. That's going to create more lubrication in your knees, and it's going to give you the body the building blocks to start repairing some of that cartilage. Okay, if you have almost no cartilage or zero cartilage, it's going to be hard to rebuild that. But the good thing is, even if you've got a tiny microscopic 1 millimeter layer of cartilage regrowth or repair there with a little bit of lubrication, you'll be shocked. You'll go from being in pain to being in no pain, just with that little lip. The key is to continue taking it. Remember, you're going to the gym, you're wearing away connective tissue and joints, but if you don't take the raw materials your body needs to repair it, there's no way it's going to get better. It's going to get progressively worse. Now, you could take Arthritis and it might, keep it at bay, and that might be enough, just so that you can get through the workouts. There's no miracle. Now, you might want to even take more, because that's the minimum, 5 pills twice a day. Some people are noticing that they get even better results with 5 pills 3 or 4 times a day. And take that with food, please. Because you're giving your body more materials to rebuild connective tissue. And once again, just getting even a little lubrication, because we know that glucosamine and chondroitin are precursors to the synovial fluid in there. That's going to help out too, because a lot of times it's just a lack of lubrication. That's why sometimes if you go for Synvisc injections, they're actually injecting like a gel matrix into there, which will create some lubrication as well. But you got to give your body the raw materials it needs, and then you got to give it at least, it's going to take 2-3 weeks to really start working in terms of rebuilding and repairing. But you should notice some good ability to do that. Now, if that doesn't help, then that means you're really far gone and you have bone on bone. And at that point, it might be worth looking into. Look, no one wants to get a knee replacement, but when you're in your 50s and you've worn down all the cartilage and you're just walking around in pain and you can't train and it's affecting your mental state, you might want to look into getting a knee replacement if that's warranted. Go to a good doctor, see what they think. Once you get that knee replacement, you're going to be out of pain. I mean, that's a big thing, and then it's going to be up to you of how much you want to train and how much you want to push it. But the good thing about knee replacements, because it's a hinge joint, they do really well once you rehab. And the rehab is a pain in the ass, but once you rehab it, they're pretty solid. You can pretty much train the way you need to on those things. And they're pretty biomechanically pretty much the same as your normal knee. So you shouldn't really notice too much difference.
Go to Parker Dubose. Your opinion on training 4 days on, 3 days off for the off season. I'm not a fan of training on the weekends. I still eat clean on the weekends too. I train low volume, heavy weight.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. When I was in my heyday, I liked to take 2 or 3 days a week off, but I would space it. I would do 2 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. But if you don't want to train on the weekends and that's your time to be alone and to have your own time to yourself, that's fine. 4 days is more than enough. You get your whole body in, break your body into 4 body parts, into 4 sections rather. You train each one time, and then you take the 3 days off, and then you start over. No problem whatsoever. I think in some cases, it will actually benefit the person, because that extra rest will help with the recuperation of the muscle. Because a lot of times people take 1 day off and then they go back to the gym and they're really not recuperated. So those 3 days in a row off will make sure that you really have repaired most of what the damage you did during the week would be.
Good one here from Neil Zalewski. Has bodybuilding gotten more expensive or cheaper today compared to when you were still competing?
I think it will always get more expensive. Well, I'll put a caveat on that. Growth hormone was very expensive back in the day. It's much cheaper nowadays. But by and far, I mean, there's more people are taking more supplements nowadays, obviously. The foods, services that a lot of people are using. Back in the day, we made all our own food. There was no food services. So if you're using a food service, obviously that's going to add a level of expense. The gym memberships are cheaper nowadays, I think, because there's more competition. So I don't know. It's probably, if you adjust for inflation and everything like that, it's probably comparable, I would say. I don't think, if anything, the problem is with today's drug use is you don't know what you're getting, if it's real or not. So some people, are spending more money to make sure they get a better quality of drug that's coming from a pharmaceutical, source, and they really, they don't want to risk using some of these generic underground labs, and I don't blame them. I mean, obviously, if you use a Roid test kit and test your drug potency, like I sell at DavePalumbo.com, that's going to obviously allow you to maybe buy a cheaper source of drugs if you know that they're good, and so it's a trade-off. Is it more expensive? Maybe a little bit, but not that much more.
Let's go to JPA Fit. Why are so many doctors and, I guess, quote, hormone specialists in New York City prescribing HCG for weight loss? Extremely irresponsible, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, HCG doesn't burn fat. I remember when the HCG diet first came out and everyone was like asking me, what do you think about this? Oh, I'm doing it. I'm going to this. And one of the caveats was with these doctors that were prescribing the HCG for weight loss was you had to follow their diet. And the diet was a 600 calorie diet. I eat that in one meal. Of course you're going to lose weight if you're eating 600 calories a day, especially these women they were giving it to. I'm like, and I said, well, I even told a lot of these women who came to me, I'm like, doesn't it make sense that you're losing weight, you're eating 600 calories a day? They're saying, yeah, but the HCG will preserve the muscle. I'm like, just eat a high protein diet. You don't have to starve yourself to lose weight. The HCG has no, first of all, for women, it does nothing. For men, at least it boosts testosterone a little bit. It's not going to do that for women. If anything, it's going to, it could theoretically make you more fertile, as a woman. So there's always been a million different scamming diets and fad diets, I call them, throughout the years. I mean, you can make a laundry list a mile long at some of the crazy diets that have come out and different things. But there's always a clue. Like when you see HCG, you think, well, I wonder how that burns fat. Now, most people have no idea how any drugs work, so they think, oh, it's the HCG that's burning the fat. No, it's the fact they put you on a 600-calorie diet. That's why you lost weight. And that's not sustainable, of course. So as soon as you lose the weight and you go back to eating normal, you gain all the weight back because you don't know how to eat. They're just basically starving you to death, basically, for however many months or weeks that you follow this diet. HCG has not, you don't even need to use the HCG to do that. So I agree with the person who asked the question. It's very irresponsible.
Time for a couple of more questions. Let's go to Relentless Lucas. Why does my lower back get pumped when doing squats?
When you're very fluid retentive, you'll feel a lot of pressure in the lower back area. Matter of fact, people start to mistake it for kidney pain. A lot of times I've had guys come to me and say, and I've actually thought that myself, oh shit, I must have messed my kidneys up, I have pain. But the truth is, if your kidneys had something wrong with them, you wouldn't feel anything back there. That pain, that thumping, or that almost like pressure in your lower back where that kidney is, that's just from fluid retention usually. So especially right after a show, you have that rebound, you gain like 25, 30 pounds in the first 2 weeks. You're getting great workouts, you look huge, you're all pumped, but there's so much fluid in you that you lose your flexibility and you start to get that almost like Charlie horse feeling in your lower back. You have to kind of sit down between sets. It's very uncomfortable. That's not something you want. And usually if you reduce your carbs and or take a diuretic, a little Diazide, that will get rid of that pain and get rid of that pump. But that usually happens, like I said, right after a show because your body's electrolyte balance is all screwed up.
Robbie Robinson chimes in and says, Dave, get up and keep moving. So,
Robbie Robinson actually sent me a very nice Instagram. I don't check Instagram messages on a regular basis, but I was just for some reason perusing them last night. And I saw, I went into the requests. I guess people who don't follow me, when you get a message, you get a request. And I saw Robbie Robinson. I'm like, I got to see what, and he wrote this very heartfelt, nice thing to me about staying motivated and because of my whole thyroid cancer thing. And, how to basically keep the right mindset through the whole process and that I would get through it. And I thought it was tremendously nice for him to take the time, and write that to me personally. And it meant a lot to me. So thanks, Robbie.
Last question from Foster Fit. Now, I know there have been a lot of rumors, a lot of whispers as far as trial and as far as what people have been hearing. But I guess from what you have heard, what is the latest with Shawn Rhoden?
We were debating this on the Heavy Muscle Radio the other day, and it's almost, look, I don't know if Shawn did anything wrong or not, and that's for the courts to decide. But the fact that it's taking this long for him to get the trial and actually be cleared, I don't know if it's his lawyer's fault. I have to believe it's the court's fault because of the COVID, and they've been delaying things. I know a lot of trials have been delayed. But it's not right because Shawn can't get back to doing what he loves to do, which is bodybuild in terms of, and not just bodybuild, he's bodybuilding, obviously, he's working out, competing. I mean, he's losing the best years of his career. He was Mr. Olympia and he couldn't defend his title 2 years in a row. So that's a shame. Now, if Shawn's guilty, obviously he should go to jail. But if he's not guilty, look at all this time he's losing, and let's just get this thing over with. Go to court, try the case, and, whatever happens, happens. If he's guilty, he goes to jail. If not, he's going to be free and he can go do what he wants. Now, if they're going to keep, if it's not his lawyer that's doing this and it's the court that keeps delaying this, I feel that the IFBB should allow him to compete at the Olympia this year because it's not his fault. And it's been long enough, I think, that, 1 year is one thing. But you know what? We're going on like 3 years now almost. So at this point, let the guy compete. If he can't help that he can't get a fair speedy trial. I mean, that's one of the absolute rights in the Constitution, the right to a speedy trial, a speedy and fair trial. So at this point, I'm in favor of letting him compete because it's been so many years already. And whether it's being delayed once again because of COVID or not, it doesn't matter. At this point, let the guy enjoy his livelihood until he's proven guilty, okay? If he is guilty, then he has to go to jail. If he's not, then he'll continue competing. But at this point, he's already been punished for 2 years of not being able to do the Olympia. And we don't even know if the guy's guilty. If he's not, you're taking away his best years. So I think I would like to see him be able to compete this year. I think it would be super exciting, especially because he probably has one of the few physiques that could actually unseat Ramy. He's not as big as Ramy, but structurally he's better than Ramy. And that would be a nice matchup because they're about the same height. I'd like to see them on stage next to each other,
Let's see. Fingers crossed for 2021 and to see if we'll see Shawn Rhoden back up on the Olympia stage. That's going to do for this episode of Ask Steve. Reminder right now at Species.Nutrition.com, macadamia nut oil, $14.99 through Sunday night or while supplies last. Again, at Species.Nutrition.com. For Tyler Shore and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.